Why have Jews and Arabs always been at war? Why do conflicts persist not only between Israel and Arab nations, but even among Muslim countries themselves despite time, diplomacy, and countless peace efforts? What surprises many is this: the answer doesn't lie solely in politics, nor in modern history. It goes back to an ancient story in the Bible between two half-brothers, Isaac and Ishmael, sons of the patriarch Abraham. A conflict born from a father's divided love still echoes through the Middle East to this day. But this video goes beyond simply explaining the origins of the conflict. We'll dive deeper into a rare moment in the Bible where the two brothers meet again, not in war, but in tears and reconciliation. And from that reunion emerges a prophecy, one full of hope about how this age-old conflict could one day find peace. If you truly long to understand what lies beneath the surface of today's wars, hit subscribe and stay with us until the end, because what you're about to hear may not just shift your perspective, it may change what you believe is possible. It all begins with a sacred promise. God called Abraham, a man living in a land of many gods, to establish a new covenant, not just with him, but with an entire people who would come from his lineage. The Lord said, "I will make you the father of a great nation. Through you, all the nations of the earth will be blessed." But here's the paradox: his wife, Sarah, was barren. She was old, long past childbearing years, with no sign of hope after years of prayer. In that weariness, human intervention entered the divine plan. Sarah proposed that Abraham take her Egyptian maidservant, Hagar, as a concubine to bear him a child. It was a culturally acceptable solution at the time, but it became the seed of a spiritual fracture that would echo for millennia. Hagar conceived and gave birth to Ishmael, Abraham's first son. For 13 years, Ishmael was the living symbol of God's promise. He was loved, expected to be the heir, the natural continuation of Abraham's line. Then, the unimaginable happened. Sarah, at the age of 90, conceived not by human plan, but by the grace of God. She gave birth to Isaac, the child of miracle, the child of divine promise. And from that moment, history began to split into two paths. On an ordinary day, when Isaac was being weaned, Sarah saw Ishmael laughing or mocking Isaac, but in the eyes of a mother once broken by infertility, it was not innocent laughter. It was a silent threat, a looming question of inheritance. Sarah pleaded with Abraham, "Drive out the maidservant and her son, for the son of the slave woman shall not share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." It was a heart-breaking decision. Abraham was torn between his love as a father and obedience to God. But then, God said, "Listen to Sarah, for through Isaac your offspring shall be named. But I will also make a great nation of the son of the maidservant, because he is your child too." And so, Hagar and Ishmael were cast out from the camp. in the burning desert, when water ran dry and hope faded, Hagar laid her child beneath a bush and turned away. Unable to bear the sight of her son, dying of thirst. It was at the very edge of despair that an angel appeared in a sacred whisper. He said, "God has heard the boy crying. Get up. Do not be afraid. I will make him into a great nation." Ishmael would go on to father 12 princes from them. The Arab peoples arose, thriving across deserts, building empires, languages, cultures, and a distinct faith. A people born in the fire of survival, fierce, independent, and unyielding, just as Scripture described. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. Isaac, born not by human effort, but by divine miracle, became the bearer of the covenant. From him came Jacob Israel, and through him, a people called God's own. A nation taught to keep the word, to carry light, and to embody divine election. Yet from these two lineages sprang a conflict that never truly ended. Not merely political, but a profound dispute over identity, divine choice, promise, and rightful inheritance. Thus, history became a long trail of invisible wounds, blessing and jealousy, covenant and rejection, the pride of being chosen and the pain of being forgotten. And still the question echoes, who is the true child of the promise? Who has rightful claim to the Holy Land? Which story is true? Isaac or Ishmael, over thousands of years. From one root Abraham, 2 lines grew in separate directions. Isaac fathered Israel, bearing the covenant, the law of Moses, the prophets, and the sacred temple in Jerusalem. Ishmael became the forefather of the Arab peoples, guiding a civilization of brilliance through art, science, and the Islamic faith delivered by the Prophet Muhammad. 2 faiths, 2 histories, 2 ways of understanding God, yet one origin. And from this shared root arises the question that has never been silenced. Who is the true heir of Abraham's promise? That question doesn't just echo in the past. It burns today on the ruined streets of Gaza, in the wailing sirens of Tel Aviv, in the eyes of children caught between rubble and smoke. The Middle East today is a living mosaic of unresolved wounds, where faith is weaponized, and sacred memory becomes a battlefield. From the Crusades, to the fall of the Ottoman Empire, to the partitions after world wars, and the harsh political realities of today, every chapter of history adds a fresh wound to the holy body of this land. But more profoundly, this is not just a war over territory. It is a war over identity. Each side believes it holds the truth, that it is the chosen one, and in that belief, the other becomes the threat. That is why this conflict cannot be solved by treaties alone. It calls for a sacred transformation, a reconciliation of hearts, where 2 brothers stop seeing each other through a rifle scope and begin seeing each other as sons of the same Father. Not a question of who wins or loses, but the realization that both are seen by God. Both are loved, both are invited into a greater story. And yet, the Middle East today seems to have turned its back on that divine voice. The thunder of shellfire in Gaza, the retaliatory strikes between Israel and Iran, the looming shadow of war across the region all reignite that ancient question. Can these two brothers still recognize one another? In just over half a year, tens of thousands have perished, millions displaced, and children now grow up not with prayers, but with sirens. It seems like a modern conflict with missiles, satellites, and military strategy, but its roots lie deep within sacred history, where God's promise has been misunderstood, hijacked, and weaponized to justify exclusion. And so, the solution lies not just in diplomatic summits or ceasefire agreements, but in a conversion of the heart, where both sides cease debating who is chosen, and begin learning how to live as those who have been seen, loved, and called in different ways. If Isaac and Ishmael, in the ancient world, could bow together before their father's grave, then surely, in this age of light and faith, can we not learn to bow before each other's pain? Perhaps only when we learn to recognize the tears of the other as real, and their pain as sacred, will the promise of Abraham be fulfilled. A promise not for one nation alone, but for all of humanity. A grace extended from the heart of a God who shows no favoritism, but always invites. In the darkness of war, the Bible still lights a flame of hope that history does not have to repeat itself if humanity is willing to learn from it. And even in the most devastated of places, a new path can still be drawn, not with the sword, but with a prayer, Our Father, who art in heaven. Pope Francis has repeatedly emphasized that no one should be threatened with destruction, urging all sides to walk the path of dialogue and reconciliation, based on justice, fraternity, and the common good. Moreover, he has described Gaza as a land whose doors are open to suffering and called for a ceasefire, the release of prisoners, and a spark of hope for millions. From a philosophical perspective, Catholic philosopher Jacques Maritain asserted that human dignity and truth cannot be divided by ethnicity or religion, and that only a full and integral humanism can help us overcome hatred and build a system that truly respects the human person. In harmony with this, the Second Vatican Council's pivotal 1965 declaration, Nostra Aetate, proclaimed that the Catholic Church regards with esteem those truths that are found in other religions, opening a real path for interfaith dialogue between Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Cardinal Michael Fitzgerald, a leading expert in Catholic-Muslim dialogue, affirms that the dialogue we need today is not meant to create a new religion, but to help all sides remove artificial obstacles and encounter one another through three dimensions: dialogue of life, dialogue of action, and dialogue of religious experience. It was Pope Francis himself together with Grand Imam al-Tayyib, who signed the 2019 document on human fraternity, declaring dialogue is the way, cooperation is the conduct, and mutual understanding is the method. It is in the context of this dark night of war that the biblical image Isaac and Ishmael burying their father together is once again evoked through the Church's call today. Lay down your weapons, bow before each other's pain, recognize the human worth in one another. When the Pope says, "No one should be destroyed," he is not simply condemning violence, he is inviting every heart to return to the shared dignity of humanity and to the spirit of Abraham, so that no one remains a permanent enemy, but becomes a brother walking toward a shared grave of love and hope. In the history of mankind, victory has often been measured by the number of enemies defeated, by the lands conquered, or by the empires erected upon the ashes of devastation. But is that truly victory, when blood runs like rivers, when villages are set ablaze, and when hatred takes root in the hearts of future generations? Has anyone truly won? The answer is no. A victory built on destruction is nothing but a temporary illusion, a vicious cycle of pain and revenge with no end in sight. True victory does not lie in destroying one's enemies, but in transforming them into friends. It is when a soldier, instead of raising his weapon, extends a hand to help someone who has fallen. It is when a community, rather than building walls of division, opens its doors to welcome those who are different. In the Middle East, a land where history has been written in centuries of conflict, such a victory holds deeper meaning than ever before. Here, where borders are not only lines on a map, but also boundaries etched into hearts. Only love has the power to erase the distances. Compassion is not weakness. It demands extraordinary strength, the strength to overcome fear, to face pain, and to choose forgiveness over revenge. In the shadows of war, when everything seems reduced to life or death, compassion becomes the only light that can lead the way. A small act of compassion, like sharing a piece of bread with the hungry, listening to a stranger's story, or simply smiling at a frightened child, can create ripples that change entire communities. Imagine a mother in Gaza who has lost her child in an airstrike, yet chooses to open her home to care for other orphans. Or an Israeli soldier, once a fighter, who now devotes his time to building bridges of peace between divided communities. These stories are not legends, they are living testaments to the power of compassion. Such acts, though seemingly small, are seeds of hope planted in barren soil, waiting for the day they bloom. Saying, "I'm sorry and I forgive you," is not a sign of surrender. It is an act of courage. In the context of the Middle East, where wounds from the past still bleed, these words carry a timeless power. To say "I'm sorry" is to acknowledge wrongdoing, to confront the painful truth that none of us are without fault. To say "I forgive you" is to release oneself from the chains of resentment and open a new path toward peace. Think of the tomb of Abraham, a sacred site connecting faiths, where people of shared ancestry have long been divided by history. At this tomb, there is no room for arrogance or hatred. Only humility and compassion can bring people together. When a Jew and a Muslim stand before Abraham's tomb, bow their heads in silence, and pray for peace, they are not just honoring the past, they are building the future. The victory of love doesn't have to be expressed through grand gestures. Sometimes, the smallest acts carry the greatest meaning. A hug between former enemies, a kind word amidst the roar of gunfire, a glance of shared sorrow in the midst of pain. These acts, though humble, are the bricks that build a better world in the darkest night, when all hope seems lost. It is these loving actions that become the flame that lights the way. In the Middle East, where the shadow of conflict seems eternal, small acts of love are the stars that pierce the sky. A teacher guiding children from both sides of a divide in the same classroom. A doctor saving lives, no matter where the patient comes from. An artist painting stories of peace. These individuals, through their quiet deeds, are writing a new narrative for this land. When people allow themselves to be touched by the reality of war, they don't just feel the pain, they come to understand the value of peace. When they allow their hearts to be pierced by the heart of another, they learn how to love and to truly see one another. And when they dare to let prayer guide their steps, they become bearers of light, sowers of hope on barren soil. The prophecy of victory is not a fanciful promise. It is an invitation for each of us to be part of the change. In the Middle East, where history seems to echo endless cycles of conflict, this prophecy is a reminder that the future is not fate. The future is shaped by the choices we make today. The choice to love, to forgive, and to build. Eternal victory doesn't belong to the strongest. It belongs to those who love the most. It is not measured by the number of enemies defeated, but by the number of hearts touched in the eyes of the Creator. This kind of victory is a light that never fades, a flame that burns eternally in the dark. And on the arid soil of the Middle East, where seeds of peace are being sown, that victory is waiting to bloom. Let us walk this path together, the path of compassion, of forgiveness, and of love. Let us become true victors, not by defeating others, but by lifting them up. And let our prayers be more than words. Let them become actions, footsteps, and dreams of a better future.